From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains from sea to shining sea, Detroit down to Houston and New York to LA, where there's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say, there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
Thank you very much. That is a lot of religion out there. That's pretty good. We like that.
President Trump, we are so honored to have you join us in front of this very, very important Faith Summit. You are my friend, and I am so blessed to have been a part of your life. Some people don't know, for over 24 years as a part of, I feel, not only family, but your pastor and an advisor. And I got to work in the White House and represent People of Faith as senior advisor to Faith Initiative and Opportunity. One of the greatest honors ever. We have thousands of pastors here and faith leaders, and their number one issue that they want to know about is, what about your faith? Let's talk about, how is faith formed in you, and what does it mean to you?
Well, thank you very much, Paula. And you have been. I've known you for a long time, and she's a great person, a great woman. And really, it's an honor. It's an honor. It really is. And she's a hard worker, too. Boy, does she work. And, I advised her. She had some property, and she grew out of the churches. She got bigger. She was going wild. And in Florida, I met her, and she called and asked for advice. One of the churches, it was in the middle of nowhere, and she had big, the number of people going every Sunday. And she said, they've offered me money for this land. I can put it to very good use with all the people that need help. Should I sell? I said, you might as well sell. Take the money right now, because it can change really quickly. And she'll go a little bit further out. And she just kept doing that. I said, this is a great business. This is pretty good. But she put the money to great use, and you've helped so many people, and it's really great. And really nice to know you.
Thank you.
Really nice to know you. Thank you. Look, we're going through a lot of problems in our country. If you take a look at the anger, the problems that we have, and a lot of it is that it's less based on religion now than it was 25 years ago and 50 years ago. And we were people would say, a Christian and really religious, even other faiths country. And that seems to be heading in the wrong direction. And I think as that goes down, I think that our country goes down. I really do. I think this is a country that needs religion. It's like the glue that holds it together. And we don't have that. That's why you are the most important people. And I'm not sure you even realize it. And they're trying to hurt you. They're trying to stymie you. This new administration, this new radical left group of people, and it's not so new. It's been around for a while, and they are people that are not nice people. If If you happen to be Catholic, we don't have too many Catholics here, maybe, but boy, they are persecuting Catholics. I actually said, how could a Catholic possibly vote for Kamala? How could that? I mean, the level of anger and the level of vitriol. When you see what's going on with the FBI and the Catholic Church, I say, what is happening? And the expression is that you're next, because everybody's next with this group. And they have a very bad agenda, and we have to stop it, and we have to win this election. I think winning this election, I think it's going to be the most important election in the history of our country.
Absolutely. So let's go back for just a minute. Let's go back into your childhood, because you didn't start going to church when you were a politician. Church was such a formation of your faith, going to Sunday school, going to the Presbyterian Church, Norman Vincent Peale's, Billy Graham Crusade. Talk about the formation of your faith as a child.
So when I was very young, my mother was from Scotland, and she was religious. I don't know as religious as some of the people in this room, but she was religious. She was a believer. And my father was a real worker, and he was religious too, but he was working all the time. And a good man, great heart, a very strong guy, but had a great heart. And I remember would walk down the street, would walk down some street, and there'd be somebody holding a cup. You don't see it too much anymore, but you used to have, and they'd have pencils, and they'd actually sell you pencils. But he'd always put $100 in that cup, always. He'd never pass that cup. And then $100 is probably like $1,000 today, right? So, but he was always very generous in that way. So I grew up in Queens, and oh, good. We have a lot of people. Good. It's good education. Getting through Queens is pretty good education. And that includes Brooklyn and a lot of other places, actually. But Queens was good. We had a very nice area, really a good area. But my parents thought going to church was important, and we'd go to church. But I really went to Sunday school. And I learned, and Sunday school really took place a lot of times on a Saturday. Does that make sense? Does that still happen, Saturday? I call it Saturday church. And we'd spend an hour, and we had some very good people teaching, pastors, ministers. I think we called them probably more ministers. And the church was associated, it was called First Presbyterian Church. And it was a very old building, but a beautiful building, white, just beautiful building, actually. And I'd love to go back and visit it sometime. I haven't been in that area in a little while, but I'd love to go back and visit it. But it was a great feeling. So I went to Sunday school on Saturday, and sometimes we'd have a little Sunday school after the church service, but most people liked it actually on Saturday better. And I did that for a while, a number of years, actually. And would go to church. And, the bottom line is it made me feel good. Even at a young age, it made me feel good. Sometimes you couldn't get out of there fast enough, I have to be honest with you. And sometimes a lot of it depended on who was there and who was your teacher. One of the things that did happen as I grew older, we went to Marble Collegiate because my father was in Queens and Brooklyn mostly, and I started there, and then I went to Manhattan and started doing things in Manhattan. I became much more Manhattan-oriented, and I started a church, Marble Collegiate Church. It was a beautiful church, and down on Fifth Avenue in the 20s. And I started going there, and that was Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, who wrote the book, The Power of Positive Thinking. And I was telling stories about him. I don't know if you'd like me to do that, but
I'd love it.
He was a great, you could call him a pastor, I think, or a minister, but I never differentiated actually with him. But what he was is an unbelievable speaker and loved God, but he was able to speak, and this doesn't often happen. And when the service was over, you were disappointed that it wouldn't continue. He would tell stories of modern day things as it related to the Bible. And he was actually an incredible storyteller. He told the story of Alfred Sloan, who was the founder of General Motors. And he was down and out. He suffered from massive alcoholism and lots of other problems. And then he came back, and Norman, and he rose, and he this, and he'd tell the story about a man who became a great business leader. General Motors, especially. I mean, you could say especially then, because at that time there was they didn't have a lot of foreign competition. This was a whole ball game, and it was the biggest at that time. And he did a phenomenal job for a long period of time, and he became a very religious man, actually. But he told the story in great depth and detail, and it was always so fascinating the way he spoke. And I watched, because I didn't know him as a young minister or preacher, because a lot of people call him a preacher, and I just called him a religious man that made religion very interesting. He made all aspects of religion very, very interesting, and probably it was the way he did it, his performance in a sense. But I watched him for a long time. I got married in the church, and he was the minister. And then what happened is I watched him get older, and he was still great into his late 80s. And I watched his last sermon, and he got up to the lectern, and he looked at the audience, and he said, "I just can't do this anymore." He was just very tired. I was there, actually. It was amazing. And the whole church got up. And the church, by the way, you see some churches aren't getting big crowds. This church was packed every Sunday. When he spoke, every Sunday. And then they had the flow rooms, I guess they called them, where you had rooms that had like television sets or whatever it was, closed circuit, I think they called it. And you'd sit there, and you hoped you didn't go there, but, it's a reasonably big church. But sometimes, and they'd have them all over the place. I mean, they'd have all these rooms with it, and some of them pretty good-sized rooms. The place was packed all the time. But I watched him as he got up, and he said that. He just said, "No, I can't do this anymore. I won't be able to do this." It was his last sermon. And he always stood to the left of the lectern, and he was holding it, and he always held it, let it go, hold it, and walked around a little bit, but he was very comfortable to the left. I remember always, it seemed that, but he was holding it with his right hand and just said, "I can't do this anymore." And he was, I don't know if he hit 90, but he was not a young guy. But he was a fascinating person to watch. He was great. He was great. The other person that I found incredible, because my father would take me to Yankee Stadium to see Billy Graham, right? Billy Graham. And that place would be packed, and he was amazing. And he was, that was another one. And he had a gentleman who would sing "How Great Thou Art." You know who that is, right? Of course. And he sang it, Shay, that's right. He sang it for years, and my father thought it was the greatest. It was, I'd said, well, compare this to Elvis's version. Later on to my father, long later, but, Elvis, this was before Elvis almost. But I said, "Dad, which is better?" He said, "Not Elvis." And we all like Elvis, right? But, he was just, he was great. But Billy Graham was great. He had an influence. He had a real influence. And it's nice to see Franklin Graham doing so well. He's doing so many things for so many people.
It's amazing because your faith has played such a role in your actions. Like when you mentioned Franklin, many people don't know that even recently you organized and gave $7 million to Samaritan's Purse for the North Carolina disaster relief. Amen.
Well, you couldn't give it to a better person. It's amazing. Yeah, we raised a lot of money, and we gave a lot of money. I had a friend of mine, Steve Woodcoff, he gave him $1 million or something. They are just, a lot of people are very generous, but Franklin does a great job. He's always, whenever I go to, because as president, I do it a lot. You'd go to a tornado, or you'd go to a hurricane. I mean, I saw a lot of very bad things. The destruction of nature is amazing. Some of these tornadoes, the big ones I watched, and I'd look, and it was like cut by a razor blade. The damage on the left was 0, and the damage on the right was devastation. It would be like when you'd fly over it in a helicopter, you'd see a straight line, as straight as it could be, but it was literally cut. a tree on the left wasn't touched, a tree on the right was turned upside down, and sometimes it was 500 yards away. Amazing, the power of nature. But whenever I go there, I see Franklin. He's always there. He's always the first one to... I said, I'm going to beat you to one of these sites one of these days, Franklin. And he really means it. He's a good person. I mean, I had one problem with Franklin. Should I tell him the problem?
Sure.
She's saying, uh-oh.
It's a great one.
No, but I was telling... I tell stories. We have these big rallies. Last night we had a great rally at Madison Square Garden. And sometimes I'll use a little bit, not hard foul, but soft foul. We call it soft foul. But, you know, to emphasize something about somebody's capabilities or whatever I might be talking about. And I got a letter from Franklin, and I met him at the airport. It was on a visit that I made to North Carolina. At the airport, he was there with his planes and everybody, a lot of people. Boy, he gets such great volunteers. They're really going. So anyway, I got a letter a couple of days later, and he says, Mr. President, it's Franklin Graham, and I just want to tell you, I love what you do. I love what you say. I love your stories. I think they're great. And keep telling them, but they'd be even better if you wouldn't use foul language. And I went, true. I said, ooh. I didn't know. I wasn't sure. Was I supposed to be honored or not? And but he said the foul language, so I thought about it. And I said, I'm going to try. And I did try. And I'm not sure I'd make the emphasis quite as good. I've been pretty good about it. But I'm not sure. Every once in a while you need a little bit of something, a little spice to juice them up a little bit. But I got that letter and I sort of laughed. I said, I'm not sure you're right about this, Franklin, but I'm going to give it a shot. But he's done a fantastic job. But so many of the people I know here that we just met backstage, I mean, they have been so incredible to us. And we've had them at the White House, a lot of the pastors and respected people. I recognize a lot of them just originally by just seeing them on television for so many years, right? Including you.
I was going to say, people don't realize that we met, literally, you were watching television and called me out of the blue. And I'll never forget, you said, you've got the it factor. And I said, oh, sir, we call that the anointing. And that was our hello. And from the Swaggart families here, from Reverend Jimmy Swaggart to so many other great people that you've watched.
Is Jimmy Swaggart here?
He couldn't make it, but the whole family is
I
over
love
here.
Jim. Where is Jim? I love Jimmy
Donnie's
Swaggart.
Here.
I don't even know if he likes me, but I think he does. But where's Donnie? Where's Donnie? We got to see Donnie.
And
Donnie?
they literally have one of the biggest networks.
Hi, Donnie.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, say hello. How's he doing? Okay? That guy is a talented guy. So are you, by the way. Good job. Good job. Say hello to him.
And I think
terrific.
So many people don't know this side, so we've taken a little bit of time because I have had the up close and personal seat in your life to see God in your life. And we'll talk about faith offices and economy and immigration and everything in just a moment. But, you know, the media attacks you relentlessly. And you've been under lawfare and the absolute worst. I'll never forget Ralph Reed and Joanne, where we were at the Journey concert, my kids. And somebody said the president's been shot. And I froze, like so many people. I started crying and started praying. But when you rose up with fight, 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 woo!
Thank you.
I think so many
See, this means she likes me because she's got tears. If she didn't have tears, no, she does. She really does. She's a great, great person. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. It was very difficult for so many of us that do dearly love you and not only respect you as president and what you've done, but love you as the man. And we understand that. And I think the world got to see in one of the worst situations that you knew and know that that wasn't luck, that that was God, because he has a purpose in your life. So share just a tiny bit about God in your life now, and because we all have these journeys of faith. We have ups, we have downs, we fall, we get back up, but you've consistently had this deep respect and honor of God in your life. And that day, I think, showed the world when you knew that God saved you for a purpose.
Well, thank you very much. That was quite a day. But we had a tremendous crowd in Butler, Pennsylvania. And it was an amazing set of circumstances. And, my two sons are shooters. They're very good, very high quality. They'd be like a scratch golfer or better. I mean, they're both very good. They know everything about guns, and they learned it from their grandfather. They spent time in Europe, back and forth during summers and all, and they're very good. But they understood, they know exactly what the weapon was that they used, that this person used. And it was 130 yards away. And when Don called me first, he said, somebody was protecting you up there, because it's almost impossible for even a bad shot to miss you from that distance. Now, he didn't miss me. Probably an eighth of an inch is the difference. And it all happened to be because I was looking to the side on a chart on illegal immigration. Can you believe it? That famous chart, that now famous chart. But I never do it. It's very interesting, because if you look at the circumstances, I never do it. I never use that chart at the beginning, and it's always on the left. I never do it at the right, and I only use it maybe 15 or 20% of the time. I don't use it for every speech, and I go off teleprompter a lot, which is, I think, better. But it's nice to have a president that can go off teleprompter, right? We don't seem to be having that. We don't seem to be having that much anymore. But anyway, so I was talking about something, and I just said, pull down that chart if you would. And I turned to the right very quickly, and ping. And I knew something was real bad. And I went down. I think I was screaming, probably go down, because, I don't think I would have been that. If you see the thing, which you've only seen about 10,000 times, it's probably the most played clip ever. But if you see it, the move down was pretty fast. And I think I was probably listening to different people, including Secret Service, to get down. But no, I got hit. And, hit hard. And but it was an eighth of an inch. And I was down there, and some things are surreal. I was asked a question the other day by a big journalist. What was it like when you won the presidency? And in fact, it was Joe Rogan that asked me this question. It was very good question. I thought it was a good, and I talked about it. It was sort of surreal, because all of a sudden I'm riding down to the White House, and I'm passing a building that I had just built, a hotel, Pennsylvania Avenue, beautiful. And I sold it to Waldorf. It's a Waldorf Astoria now. It's nice. And it was very successful. And then we go down a little further, and we're at the White House. And then all of a sudden I'm standing by the Lincoln bedroom. I said, that was such a surreal experience. But when I was shot in front of, massive numbers of people, tremendous numbers, you couldn't even see the end. And I was down there. I fully understood what had happened. I was shot in the ear, and the Secret Service thought I was shot elsewhere. They thought I was shot much more than once. And I guess 8 bullets were shot, and the Secret Service person shot 1. Also helped, but as I understand it, probably by the local police, who shot 1, also hit the rifle, and Secret Service guy hit the target. But both of them, played a very big role. Otherwise, you would have had a much, because he had a lot of ammunition, this guy, a lot of people. And it was wall-to-wall people. It would be like, taking everybody, going back as far as you can. It was as dense as it is right in this room right now. So it could only hit people. But I knew exactly where it was. So I knew it was my ear. They said no. I said, no, it's my ear. I got like 7 or 8 guys sitting on top of me. They were heavy. They were very heavy people. And anyway, and by the way, they were very brave because, you know, they jumped on top of me and the bullets were flying right over their head. They were Secret Service was very brave. They were very brave. And, you know, they really were. It was incredible. I heard the bullets. You know, I didn't know. You hear those things are moving, and you hear them as clear as you can, as clear as I hear you. So anyway, but what I did see is when you're in that position, you have like this feeling that usually a lot of times you wouldn't really understand. I had total, but when Don called me up, he said, "Dad, you know what? For 130 yards, to me it sounded pretty far away, but for a shooter, 130 yards is like nothing." And he said, "It's a miracle that that's when I first realized it's a miracle that bullet just hit your ear. It's a miracle." But if I didn't turn, so at all of these circumstances, if I didn't turn at that exact angle, because he was right exactly 90 degrees, he was exactly there. If I didn't turn, if I turned halfway, no good. If I turned a little bit past that, no good. It had to be that exact angle. And I was going further, but this was the angle, and this was when the bullet came in, because 100th of a second later, I would have been turned too far, because I was going further, another 25%, because the chart was back here. So I was doing that, and it went by. And he said that, you know, God has to have done this because it's impossible. Think of all the circumstances when you think.
Amen.
Think of all the circumstances. You're turning. That's big luck right there, right? Big something. Something happened that you'd be just in that position. And it was only 1/8 of an inch off, right? So it's like, I mean, it's incredible. But also, as I said, I'm never right. I'm always left. It's always at the end. I never take it up at the beginning. This was almost the first sentence of what I was talking about, right at the beginning, first paragraph at least. And it was very early. So there were so many different things. And I remember Don, and then it was confirmed by Eric. Eric said, "I can't believe it." And when I got to the hospital, the doctors and everything was great, unbelievable. But it was, the ear bleeds a lot, just in case. You don't want to find out about it. But the ear bleeds a lot. The doctor said like the most in the body has to do with cartilage. I don't know, but man, there was a lot. And I said, "Why does it?" He said, "Let me tell you, before I tell you that, I suggest you go and buy a lottery ticket." The doctor told me that. I'm sitting on the... I said, "Why?" He said, "You are the luckiest guy. I've been doing this for 25 years. That I'm even talking to you is a miracle. Or that I'm talking to you is a miracle, right?"
Absolutely.
So somewhere, all of us, we had a little help up there. And I would like to think, and I don't know this at all, but I would like to think that it's because he wants our country and maybe the world to be helped. Wants our country to be helped. God wants our country to be helped. It would be a really nice thing to say that. But now we have to win an election, too. So I hope number one, we win the election. And I think we're doing very well in the election, by the way. But I hope we win the election. And we have to get all the Christians to get out there and vote because, you know, I shouldn't scold anyone, but Christians aren't known for being very solid voters, you know.
Show of hands, how many of you have done early voting already? Yeah, and stats are showing us we are going out by the droves. And
who is going to vote?
Yep. So
okay, a little bit more. That's good, because we're leading in all the early votes. And that's unusual. Usually the Republicans aren't leading in early votes. They're usually, in fact, oftentimes very far behind. We would be 20 points behind. Sounds like impossible, but then you'd win because they'd come out on, you know, a Tuesday, and everybody would come out on Tuesday. But we really have a good note. But we're leading, and that's very unusual to be leading. Almost, it's not done. I don't know what this is. The Democrats always vote early, and the Republicans always vote late. The Republicans want to see the vote go into the hopper. The old days it was a hopper. Today it's a machine, but they want to see that They want to see the vote go into the machine. And so it's great. We have a lot of people. I was at Penn State the other night. I said, who voted? And they raised their hand. About 15% raised their hand. And the beauty of that is that means that all those other people. Then I said, who is going to vote? And the whole room practically raised. I said, I like that because we already have those votes and we're leading with just a small. So we have a chance to do unbelievable things. So I hope everybody goes out and votes.
And President Trump, we recognize and believe, too, that God has saved you for a purpose and that there is a country to save and, as you said, a world. And in your first term, you created the Faith Initiative and Opportunity, Faith Office. We fought for pro-life, Supreme Court justices, religious liberty, prison reform, second chance. Alice Johnson, John Ponder are here. So many different people are here. We had 10,000 faith leaders.
Is Alice Johnson here?
She's here. Alice,
Really?
where are you?
Oh.
Give a big...
Alice.
I know.
I love Alice.
And
Oh, wow. Hi.
Yeah.
Is it going well? She's a great woman.
Amen.
You know what should I tell just a second of your story? Because she was put in prison for being on a phone call. She wasn't making it. She was on a call, and it had to do with things that pretty much are almost legal today. And she was on a phone call having to do with drugs, and she was having a hard time. And they gave her like 50 years in jail. And a group of people came over, and they made me aware of it. And I said, that sounds very unfair. And she had already served, is it 22 or 23 years, Alice, or something, right? 23. I mean, think of it. She had like 28 years left. And first I gave her a commute, and then I gave her a full pardon. And I called her in. So good to see you. I called her in, and she came to the Oval Office. I said, so how many people are, because she's a great woman. She's a really good woman, too. Good person. And I said, how many people are like you in jail? She said, a lot. I said, everybody? Because I was testing her, because I know some deserve to be there, right? Alice, if you would have said everybody, I wouldn't have probably listened to it. She said, no, by no means. Some are very bad people, rough people. But she said, some are great. I said, can you give me a list? And she gave me a list of a lot of good people that are right. I hear they're doing really well, too. So we got them out of jail, too. Great to see you. Thank you. Thank you, Alice. We love Alice.
And there's
Great.
so many
Thank you.
things to accomplish, and people want to know when you win, as things come forth, what happens for you in the second term for Faith Office? What's your administration look like?
So, well, first of all, we're going to set that up, and we'll be talking to you and all of the people that we just met and anybody else that you think is appropriate. We'll have, but it's important, and it'll be directly into the Oval Office and me, so we'll do that. No, we have to save religion in this country. I mean, honestly, religion is under threat in this country, serious threat, and we can't let that happen because I really believe it's sort of the fabric of our country. It's the thing that holds our country together. We can't lose it, and we're not going to lose it. We're not going to lose it.
And President, I know your time's limited because we're all going to go to the rally tonight. You've got a special invitation to go to the rally, guys. But we want to ask you a few more questions, and we've got Gary Bauer here because if you just heard what the President said, that Faith Office will be in the Oval Office in the White House and directly reported to him because that, to him, is one of the most important things to people is that we remain very strong in all of our faiths. And we are so grateful for that, for you being a protector and a fighter for religion and faith and our freedom to protect. Gary, amen.
Mr. President, right here in the front, sir. Hello.
Gary Bauer, right in
here.
the very front.
Hi, Gary.
Yes, sir. Great to see you again. Great to see you again. Particularly after last night when you turned Madison Square Garden into MAGA Square Garden. I thought that was fantastic.
Great night.
Yeah, sir, everybody in this room, millions of people like them all over the country are already voting for you. They're going to vote for you 8 days from now. And the main reason is they love you, of course, but the main reason is simply gratitude. The things you already did in your first term. It's a Christian virtue to be grateful when somebody does something for you. So you deserve the vote of every Christian in America.
Thank you, Gary.
My question is about your second term, because one of the big issues right now that this loser of an administration is inflicting on us is they've taken the entire power of the federal government, the Justice Department, the Department of Education, and they're trying to smash young women by making them compete against men in athletics. And so these women are getting physically hurt. Not only that, but they have to tolerate going into a locker room or a shower or a bathroom with biological men. So they're losing their places of privacy. She also wants, as you know, Kamala Harris, to give surgeries to prisoners in our federal prison system and illegal aliens to change their gender and use taxpayer money. Sir, you've raised this dramatically and consistently when a lot of Republicans won't talk about these issues. What do you plan to do on this in your second term and when we see you after Inauguration Day?
So, and you know, it's almost, and Gary knows this better than anybody, it's almost amazing that we even have to have a question like that, isn't it? Because who would think that men should be playing in women's sports? If you would have gone back, let's say, Gary, 10 years ago, I think, but 15 years ago, the concept of men playing in women's sports, it would say, what kind of a question is that? That doesn't happen, does it? The concept of surgeries, they call it transitioning into, from a male into a female or whatever. It's so incredible that we're talking. And I like to say that we're the party of common sense, because to a certain extent, whether you're conservative or not conservative, it's like we're the party of common sense. I'll give you another example. Who would want open borders where prisoners from all over the world are allowed to come into our country, where criminals are bust into our country and we accept them, where murderers, 13,099 to be exact, over the last 3 years, are allowed to come into our country? That's what we're doing. It's crazy. They're destroying our country, but it's going to end on day one, Gary. We're not going to put up with it. All right? Day one.
So good. I know we only have a few moments, but Kelly Shackelford is here and has a question for you as well, of First Liberty.
Mr. President, first, I just start with 8 years ago, I asked you the question about judges, and you promised conservative judges. Thank you for fulfilling your promise.
Thank you.
The concern I want to ask about is, as a religious liberty group, I mean, all this weaponization of the government we've been seeing against religious freedom. You mentioned the FBI investigation of Catholics. We've got all these, we had the Navy SEALs case where they were trying to throw all these people out of the military because of their religious beliefs on the vaccine mandate. I just wonder if you have any plans to turn this around if you when you get in office, and to be able to do something to change things in the way they've been going.
Well, the mandate was a terrible thing, and a lot of good people were hurt very badly by, they just stuck to their guns, and that's it. And they ended up getting thrown out of a lot of different things, even beyond the military. They were thrown out of jobs and everything else. That was horribly handled by Biden and by some other people. But as far as overall, we have just plans to do it right. We're going to do it right. And again, that's the same kind of a thing. We can't hurt people, and we have to use sense. We have to use common sense. We have to use judgment, good judgment. We lost so many great people in the military. And they have a hard time getting people in the military. We lost so many great people because of the vaccine. If you want the vaccine, or if you don't want the vaccine, but you can't be forced to take it, and if you don't take it, you're going to lose your job. And we lost a lot of people. So, we're talking already about that, where they come back and they get their full back pay, et cetera, et cetera. So we're talking about that. Thank you.
Good. President, let's talk about Israel. You made promises. I always say promises made, promises kept. And Israel was a big one. 5 presidents had campaigned on that as candidates, but did not follow through. There were so many other things you did, from, of course, Iran, and basically defunding them and bankrupting them, to UNESCO, to UNRWA, to the Taylor Force Acts, to recognizing the Golan Heights as sovereignty and Israel the sovereign right to stand for themselves. Tell about the embassy, because that's such a story where everyone put you under pressure. What happened, and how did you make that decision?
Well, I think I've been better to Israel than, I have been better to Israel than any other president by far. Thank you very much, everybody. As Paula mentioned, we did Golan Heights. We did the Abraham Accords, a big deal.
Yes.
That was incredible. Nobody thought that was possible. And if we were there, you would have had that filled in, maybe even with Iran, because Iran was broke. They had no money. We had sanctions on them. I told China, if you buy 1 barrel of oil, you can't do business in the United States anymore. And they said, we'll pass. And I said that to a lot. And all I wanted was Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. I just wanted, that's all I wanted. Very simple. You can't have a nuclear weapon. And, we are closer to a World War III right now than we've ever been. Between Russia and Ukraine, and the Middle East is all exploding and going crazy. We are really very close, and we don't have competent people running our government. They're incompetent people. And it's a very dangerous thing. But Paul is alluding to, because I told her the story one time, when I was campaigning, I said that we'll make Jerusalem the capital of Israel. And a big part of that is you're going to move the embassy. When you move the embassy, I guess it's semi-automatic, right? And so I was going to do that, and I was all set to do it. And I was being called, I guess 6 or 7 presidents promised, and it was promised without question. But then they never did it, and I never understood why. But I do now, because when I got to office, I was inundated with calls from very important countries and unimportant countries. Everybody was calling me, don't do it, it'll be bloodshed in the streets. Don't do it, it won't be good, don't do it. Anyway, but I was going to do it, and I promised I was going to do it, and I felt there wouldn't be bloodshed. I was right about that, by the way. But they said there'd be bloodshed. There was every bad thing. So I started getting a lot of calls because people were hearing that I was going to do it. And I don't want to say but who, but you can imagine, from the biggest countries, from the most powerful countries, I was getting calls from, and specific countries too, and would like to speak to the president. Would it be possible? And they said it was about Jerusalem and the capital, becoming the capital of Israel. And that means, they were going to try and talk me out of it. So this was on a Thursday, and I said, would you tell them I'm going to call them back on Monday? So good. Then on Friday, or whatever day it was, I announced that I was doing it. And I did it. I got it done. And then on Monday, I called everybody back. Hi, what's up? What do you want to talk about? And they said, oh, that's we wanted to talk. But by that time, it was already, it was out there, and there was no, I was told that the whole world was going to explode if you did that. And it didn't happen. It didn't happen. And importantly, I got it built. Once we were there, General walked in, sir, would you please sign the following papers? I said, what's that for? $2 billion to build an embassy. I said, $2 billion? Are you $2 billion? This is the United States. That's why Elon Musk is going to do a good job cutting costs. He was great last night. But I said to David Friedman, the ambassador, a very good guy, I said, David, is there anything we can buy there that's like we can renovate and fix up and have an embassy fast? Because you know that if you're going to have an embassy, they wouldn't have the embassy built for 25 years, and it would cost a fortune. And they wanted to buy this site, which was not a great site, but it was a tremendous amount of money. So he calls me up the next day, he says, we have a great site. We've been there a long time. We have a great site, and there's a building on it. It'd have to be renovated, and we can renovate it. And the bottom line is it was a much better site. We owned it already. We didn't have to spend any money. And I spent almost nothing, and we got it built in about 4 months. We renovated the building for less than $1 million. Think of it. So we saved $2 billion. And just a little cute story. A friend of mine is in New York, a very rich guy, a very big Wall Street guy, and he's got Jerusalem stone on facing the elevators in a big building in New York, very prestigious building. He's got Jerusalem stone, and every time I walk in, he said, he's Jewish. He's so proud of the Jerusalem stone. He said, Donald, this is before I was president. I don't know if I've been up there since, but he would always say, look at this, it's Jerusalem stone. After about 10 times, I said, you don't have to tell me it's Jerusalem stone anymore. So anyway, so now I'm in Jerusalem, and I have to renovate a building, and I want to do it quickly so I get the embassy open, and we have it, and it's done. And that way it's sort of more permanent. You know, it's not where they can change it and go back. So the contractors are all there. Everybody's around. They say, can you use Jerusalem stone? And is it very expensive? They said, no, it's cheap as hell. It's the cheapest thing. We have a lot of it. It's all over the place. So we did the whole building in Jerusalem stone. And it's gorgeous. You know, it's beautiful. It's known as such an expensive stone, but it wasn't expensive for me. So anyway, we did a good job. We got it built. We not only named it, we got it built. And it's a beautiful embassy. There's no reason for them to do another one.
President, there's so much we'd love to talk about economy, immigration, and you can talk about as much as you want. But the one thing I want to definitely leave us with, I've had this front row seat of watching you as a father and a grandfather. I love when Eric would tell this story. He'd be 5 years old, and you'd line him up to go to school. You'd say, no drugs, no alcohol, and no smoking. And Eric's like, but I'm 5 years old. And your children are some of the greatest people, and your grandchildren on this planet. And we know the importance of family and leaving a legacy. Many of us are fighting because we're moms, we're dads, we're grandparents, and we've had good lives. But we want to make sure that our children and our grandchildren have an inheritance and have the same freedoms we have. Talk about your family and how that works and plays out in your policy.
So a lot of people ask me about, raising their children, they have children. And I've known a lot of families, very smart families, very substantial families. It doesn't matter whether you're not, but some of these people are very smart and very, very rich. And their children were very smart, but their children never had a chance because they started drinking at an early age or they were on drugs. And I add cigarettes because I just added cigarettes. It's not a good thing to be doing. It's been proven it's bad. So I might as well add it. It's only about a second extra. You just and no cigarettes. What is that, a second or a second and a half, right? No cigarettes. But it's alcohol. Now, in those days, it was, I had a brother who was a great guy, handsome, best guy, best personality, everything. But he had an alcohol problem. And he would always tell me, no drinking. He was a strong guy. No drinking. You can't drink. No drinking. Because there were no real drugs. I don't think there were drugs at that time. That was a long time ago. And he'd say, no drinking under any because he had a problem. And he knew it was a problem. It's a hard problem to cure. Some people in the room have that problem. A lot of people have that problem. But it's a hard problem to get rid of. And he'd always say it to me, and I've never had a glass of alcohol. I never had a glass, literally. So, because of him. And if I did, I'm the personality type that maybe I'd have a big problem. I don't know. I mean, I think I possibly would. I'd have 3, 4, 5, bring them in, keep going. So I never had it. And, the great thing about that is I have friends. I had a friend at the Wharton School of Finance, and he hated the taste of scotch. Hated it. I remember it so vividly. And would go out and order scotch, even though he hated it. No, he said, you got to get used to it, because when you're out in business, because he wanted to be a businessman, when you're out in business, you got to be able to socialize, and scotch is the hot thing and all that. And he became a tremendous alcoholic. I mean, sad. And I remember when he first started. I remember at the first time he ever had a drink, a very smart guy, he had a drink and he hated it. Oh, this is terrible. But he got to like it. And the one thing about it, I can speak to somebody who's never had a drink. Literally, maybe over the course of a life, maybe a few zips, like just a zip of something that's nothing, but never had a drink, never had a glass of alcohol. And as somebody that hasn't or that never smoked, there's no longing to smoke. There's no longing to drink. There's no longing for drugs. There's no longing for any of that stuff. And that's for sure. But I know people that they drink, they're always, boy, it's a very hard thing. Even 10 years later, it's sort of a hard thing. And I always say to people, because it's a very competitive world, and these guys that would ask me oftentimes to be successful, what do I do? And by that time, it was too late because their kid was hooked on alcohol and hooked on drugs. Today, probably drugs maybe is more prevalent than alcohol, but they're both a disaster. But I tell them, I say, and I used to tell like Ivanka, no drugs, no alcohol, no cigarettes. And I'd say it all the time. She'd go, Dad, leave me alone. Oh, you're such a pain in the ass, Dad. Isn't that terrible to speak you? But she meant it with love. She meant it with love. But I drive them, I would really say it a lot too, because I've watched really smart kids, brilliant kids, get absolutely brought down. They never had a chance. They never had a chance because they got hooked. And you'll never get hooked if you never try it, if you never do it. So I don't know. To me, start them young.
Amen. And President, I know if you want to take a moment, you can, and just say final words to everyone, and then we're going to pray over you. And Danny Goki is going to come up and sing an amazing song that I think is going to touch all of us, and that will be our conclusion. But go ahead and take the liberty to share with what you want to share.
First of all, I don't even know if you know how important you are, because I'm talking to a lot of religious leaders, pastors and ministers and others. I think it's just an incredible job that you do. And sometimes you're not appreciated by the fake news media. Sometimes you're scorned by the fake news media. But I just want to let you know that the people think you're so important. I got rid of the Johnson Amendment, and I fought that very hard during my entire term, because they didn't want you to speak to people, and if you did, they'd take away your tax-exempt status. And I said, but these are the people that me and others want to hear from, and you're not letting them speak. What's that all about? And we're going to try and get rid of it permanently the next time. That's one of the things we want to do. We got rid of it during my term, but I'm going to put it in. And it's amazing that people would fight me on that, but they do. You have people that are against us very much so in politics and in our country. And sometimes I think maybe they hate our country. But you are so important. You do such an incredible job, and you keep the country together. And the more powerful you become, the better the country is going to be. So I'm just with you all the way. Thank you.
Amen. Will you let President Trump know how much we appreciate him and thank him? And I'm going to ask for those of you who've been called on to come up and pray. We're going to go right over here, President. We'll just stand here. And thank you for standing. We're just so grateful for all of you. Why don't you just grab the person's hand next to you, and we're going to pray together. As we come and just lay hands on President Trump, we believe that God not only hears our prayers, but he answers it. And I think it's amazing. We started in May, these groups, small groups, in May of 2011. And it started as a prayer group. And you came to me and you said, I don't like the way the country's going. And you said, I'm thinking about running for president. You said, what do you think? And I told you what I thought. And then you said to me, what does God say? And when you said that to me, I took that so serious. I called up many of the people who are standing behind you right now, and I asked them to come to Trump Tower. And that is where we had our first meeting and our first time of prayer. And look what the Lord has done. Amen. So we're voting, we're talking, and we're praying. Amen.